because Europeans were going to bring them here and then teach them how to make rice, but the Europeans were going to bring them here and let them bring their technology and their expertise here. South Carolina, because it has all these low-lying areas. You guys ever been on the coast of South Carolina? It's below sea level in so many places. Perfect to grow rice. So they bring these people here. There's a great book. It's called Rice and Slaves by a guy named Richard Littlefield. Okay? But they bring these people here. They're going to go ahead and do their thing. But because rice requires standing water, you guys know on rice, you've seen a rice paddy. And what does standing water bring? Mosquitoes. You guys know most people who die in wars in the Americas don't die because of gunshot wound. They either die of typhoid, yellow fever, or malaria. So, for the time period that the water is high, they leave these Africans alone in South Carolina. Meaning they're not trying to make them be Christians. Meaning they're not trying to make them learn English. Meaning for 6 months of the year, they're not messing with them. And I can't, as the new owner, tell you how to do your job because you're the one who knows how to do the job. So these people end up being called Galah or Geechees. Okay? Galah or Geechees. Geechee is pejorative. If you call somebody Geechee, they might sock you in the face. But it is a term that's used for it. Galah is the academic term, and now we basically say from the border of Virginia, the southern border of Virginia, down to Jacksonville, Florida, we call the Gullah Geechee corridor. And all along there is this remnants of all these people who were part of this tradition. So they're brought into South Carolina. By 1730, the population of South Carolina is 70% black and 30% white. It's like Jamaica. Jamaica was 8-1, blacks to white. Okay? So in this case, so people would refer to South Carolina, they would say it's like a Negro country. It's swampy land, nobody wants it, everything else. So then in 1739, a group of Africans decide to revolt. It's called the Stono Rebellion, S-T-O-N-O. And there's a great book by a guy named Peter Wood, which is called Black Majority. Once again, 70% black majority. So in the Stono Rebellion, it has perplexed scholars for years. Because in the Stono Rebellion, the Africans get together, kill the people who used to own them, and then begin going south. So you guys may know, we talk about always going north to freedom. I haven't said this a number of times in here. Time and space is important in everything we say. Because in different times, there's different routes because of different geopolitical realities. Remember I told you guys after 1850, folk gotta go to Canada, right? Well, in the 1700s, Florida was not a part of the United States and it did not have slavery. It was controlled by the Spanish. Now, the Spanish had slavery in Mexico, they had slavery in Venezuela, they had slavery in all these, but they didn't have it in Florida because they used it just to agitate the British. Florida is a swamp to this day. You can say what you want to, but you go right outside of Miami. My son went to the U. So you go right outside of Miami, there's the Everglades. I'm sorry, there's alligators rolling up on you. I used to do work at the University of Florida. When they say the gators, is real. Because they'll be in your yard, all the rest of that kind of stuff. And there's swamps right outside of Gainesville. You know, just let's be real. So the Spanish were like, that's not a prime place. There weren't a lot of people there. No, what we use is to agitate the British. What do you mean? South Carolina, boom. You go down here next, South Carolina, boom, and we go to Florida. So when people would run, they would run not north. You don't want to get all the way to Michigan from there. All you got to do is cross the border to get to Florida. So you guys know there's a group of people in Florida to this day. They're called Black Seminoles. Google Black Seminoles and push images. You guys get your phone, just Google Black Seminoles and images, you'll see it. These are people who for 150 years were escaping plantations in the southeast of the United States before Florida was a part of it, and then intermingling and intermarrying with the Seminole Indians. Yeah. So in 1739, this revolt happens and the Africans begin to march south. Everybody historically believed they were going towards Florida. So there's a city in Florida called St. Augustine, Florida. It's right outside of Jacksonville. It's the oldest city in America, or whatever else. Right outside of St. Augustine is a place called Fort Santa Teresa de Mose, which was an all-black army fort there to protect the space. So these Africans, everybody believes, are going towards Florida, but they stop and don't go. They're going south and then they stop. And then all of a sudden, the historical record says they began to celebrate, do cartwheels and flips, and the historical record said they celebrated prematurely. In essence, that the Africans didn't know that they weren't in Florida yet. You know what I'm saying? They think. But that's not really what happened. So I'll give you two pieces of the story. So that's what we used to always say it happened. Then there's a guy, his name is John Thornton, and he wrote this book called Africans and the Making of the Americas. Okay? And in that, he's a guy who really understands Congo culture. What he found out was these people were not trying to go all the way to Florida. All the artifacts of this revolt are still at the University of South Carolina and at the University of Charleston in their archives. These Africans wore these kind of things like we have around them, and they ended up translating it, and it basically says, if I die here, I die here. Well, I either live free, if I die, I'm going back home, or I'm going to be free here. And essence, I'm going to engage in this war, I'm either going to be victorious, or if I die, my soul is going back. These individuals end up, like I say, they end up getting captured because everybody says they started partying. So anyway, John Thornton, who's a scholar of Africa, specifically the Congo, ends up in, I want to say, maybe the mid-90s, in an article called The African Dimensions of the Stono Rebellion, is it? And he ends up taking all these artifacts and realizing, one, they said they were throwing these flags. The flags were actually the insignia of the military elite from the Congo. They find out that what really was going on, that one of the dudes who had been one of the heads of the military in the Congo had been put on one of these ships. And he had come to South Carolina because there were so many Congolese people, he had rallied them together. And this is what their objective actually was. People thought it was good for Florida. No, they were going to kill all the whites and then enslave the non-Congolese blacks and create a colony for the Kingdom of the Congo in the Americas. Their notion was England, a major force, has created colonies in the Americas. France has done it. You guys will talk about it in 2 days. The Kingdom of the Congo is one of the most advanced places in all of Africa. They have this interesting relationship with the Portuguese. Well, if they can have colonies, why can't we? Why is it so crazy to believe that they would want to do that? So anyway, after that happens, the British are like, we got to dilute the number of black people in South Carolina because we can't have 70-30 anymore. It's going to happen overnight every time. So, and this turns into why the South Carolina whites are loyal to the British. Before South Carolina, the only people who got land in America were people who used to be elite already in Europe. It was lords' sons, a sir, somebody's son, somebody else's son, the third son they send. One would stay here, one would become a priest, and the other would come to the Americas. But it wasn't average everyday people. It wasn't common people. You know, we think about like middle class and, I get my house. That wasn't the case. But the British needed so many people to go to South Carolina to dilute the numbers. They didn't want to take away the number of Africans that didn't even work. But they had to think, if it's 70-30, I got to import a whole bunch of more people. And so as opposed to the big plantations that you see in Virginia, which are miles long, South Carolina plantation would be like 20 acres, 20 acres, 20 acres. Why? So I can give all these people something, you get me? Versus 5 people, everything. So now, fast forward, now South Carolina is being asked to give England its Africans. South Carolina is loyal. Why? Because South Carolina's been the first group of poor whites to ever get land. And they knew that the Virginia elite would not ever accept them because of who they were. So I'm going to throw my line in with George Washington and Thomas and these people with these big, huge plantations on these. Or am I going to be a person who's got like 2 Africans that I own, a little bit of land, and I'm going to stick with the British? So all that leads to why South Carolina is loyal, because those people are new to South Carolina just since the end of the Stono Rebellion. And they were working class people who had nothing before. And it was dangerous to come to South Carolina because the blacks had already just killed a whole bunch of folk. So who's going to take the chance to go to some unforgiving land, the chance that they might get, ganked or whatever else, people who don't have anything. So when the call comes from England, will you be with us? Virginia, no. North Carolina, no. Maryland, no. South Carolina, where do I sign up? Okay? So, and to give you all that kind of stuff, because that's why the cultural piece is so strong here. The things that are going on, like saying roots, I love it. It's great, but you'll see there's just so many different ways about a new story being told. Okay, did they talk about the fishnet yet?
He has, yeah, in the movie, yeah.
Okay, talk about the fishnet. Okay, anything else? But just understand. So this is a real kind of thing. South Carolina is different, not just because it's different white people, because a thing happened called the Stono Rebellion. And before that, like I say, if it was 1738, if you went to South Carolina, it's 70% black. They kept their own languages, all that kind of stuff. Okay. These people, just real quick, who are called Galah and Geechee, as I said today, we have the Gullah Geechee corridor. So they stayed culturally African for longer than any other group of African Americans ever did. Nobody else stayed as long because 6 months out the year they didn't have anybody pressing. You know what I mean? So as late as the early 1920s, they are still big time numbers of these people on these islands, the sea islands, right outside of St. Helena Island, Hilton Head, Tybee Island, if you've ever been there, for Savannah, Georgia, all that kind of stuff. They're all up and down there. So there's this great book by this guy named Arthur Fawcett, written in the 1920s, called From Sea Island to City, that talks about this migration that they were going to try to have. They were, when I say don't call them Geechees, because it's pejorative. When you're down there, if you're black and you want to say something negative about another black person, you say, you up here being a Geechee. And it means that you're being, like, very country or very, like you don't got culture. You know what I mean? Them Geechees. Like, I used to date this girl from Winsboro, South Carolina, and her parents used to say, them's just some saltwater, low-lying Geechees. I'm like, what? That's kind of cold, you know? That's some saltwater, low-lying Geechees. Anybody ever seen the movie Soldier Story? It was actually a play on Broadway. In Soldier Story, there's this story about this murder that happens on a military base in the early period of World War II, but it's really a drama about this notion about class amongst black people. And the main character, or one of the main characters, is this guy who's called Sarge, and his whole thing is that he hates this guy named C.J. Memphis because he's a Geechee. And he keeps saying that them Geechees are what's holding us back as black people. Them Geechees are why white people think of the way that we are. Them Geechees get to singing and dances and stuff like that. It's this term that's not cool. We use academically the term Galah, okay? Galah as the term. But throughout all kinds of stuff in African American history, you'll see Geechees. There's a movie called Uptown Saturday Night with Sidney Poitier and Bill Cosby and all those little movies. They had a guy in there, Harry Belafonte played Geechee Dan. On Nickelodeon or PBS Kids, it's called Gullah Island. It just ended a few years. That's all about these people that revolted in 1739. That's the Gullah, that's the Geechee people, okay? Y'all didn't know this kind of stuff. Come on, man. Yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah. They'll use all those terms, Geechee this. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
I've been thinking this and I don't know how to ask it, but I'm just going to go ahead and ask it.
She said, I've been thinking about this and I don't know how to ask it, but I'm going to ask it, so I'm really worried about this question. Yeah.
I'm very uncomfortable and I just want your opinion. Sharing with anybody the name of what we're watching right now.
Book of Negroes?
You
guys, all right, I'm going to say this to you guys. Some of you guys are just too scared of just straight stuff.
No, so help me out with that.
It's a title of a book and it's a historical document. Next. You guys, this notion that we feel we got to like add all these extras to historical facts, we don't have to do. You just say, it's called Book of Negroes. Next. Well, I got a problem with it. That's what the book is called. It's called the Book of Negro. Like, this great book. Let me tell you a great book that has the word Negro in it. The Miseducation of the Negro. It's by this guy named Carter G. Woodson. He's the guy who created black history, okay? I remember a student telling me, I'm not reading that book because it's got the word Negro in it. I was like, you fool. This is one of the most important books you could ever read in your life. That's just a word that just meant black. You know? It wasn't N-I-G-G-E-R. It was Negro. It just meant black.
But is it not different for being a white girl like I am?
It's not. It's just, listen, you guys, Stacey, you're doing too much.
Okay.
All you teaching, I'm serious.
Okay.
People ask me these questions and I'm like, stop this. You just say it and move forward. It's history. You just go, it's called the Book of Negroes. Boom. It's a book that was created by the British. What are you going to change the name of it? Then it's not historically correct. You're going to call it the Book of what?
I know. I don't know.
She didn't even say what part of the title she had a problem with. Just
What was she? I know she didn't have a problem with the part that said book. And I didn't think she was saying
didn't say what word was a problem.
I don't think it was I don't think she was like, I don't know about That I'm just, when I use OF, it just, and at school, the word book, I don't know if I can use it. No, it's just a word that means black. It's Negro, it means black. That's all it is. And you guys, if you want to ever see a model of how to deal with this subject, watch Amanda. Come on, she's modeling this stuff all day and all night of how you do this. Amanda's not sitting there. She's history. She's using the word African American, blacks here. Listen, she's a great model if you're white and trying to figure out how to talk about this stuff. She's doing it all day, and she's not running away from words or anything like that. Here, let me give you another one. Everybody's asking, Dr. Walker, what should I call black people? What should I call them? I get so upset. I don't know what to call them. Mrs. Johnson, Mr. such and such, Doctor this, ma'am, sir. You guys get me? You know, I don't know if I would call them African American or black or whatever else. Get this, ask them. Ask them. Just say, what would you like to be called? But I don't need anybody to ask me. That's not just a regular conversation. It's just like we're talking. Okay, now what do I want to call you? I don't ask you. What do you want to call you? White girl, white. But don't do that. You guys, we put extras on stuff that we don't have to. You know, some people say, I can't remember. How am I going to remember to call this person black and this person African American? You can remember to call somebody Bob and another person Jane and another person Lucretia. You guys get what I'm saying? You got all these other names in your head that you can use, and you can recognize people and remember what their name is, but you can't seem to figure that part out. You guys need to. I always say this to people.
Sorry,
There's
getting lumped into my.
no, but listen, there's
You guys, you can just talk to me.
yeah,
Okay.
but I'm saying this because I get it. I get it on every bus. I get it when I'm walking out somewhere. I get it trying to go to the bathroom. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, God dang, you know, all right? Here's the other thing. When you, how should I say this? When there are controversial subjects, you can just say them. Like, I'm going to give you an example. Perfect. Bill Cosby is a serial rapist, period. Bill Cosby had one of the most successful and influential shows on television about positive images of black people, period. They're both true. They both exist as realities. Do you hear me? They're both the reality. And you can just, that's why you can say Thomas Jefferson was a great person, he did such and such, and Thomas Jefferson owned 358 people. It's just real, and then you just move to the next one, right? You just say it. And this is humanity. We are complex and contradictory. You get me? Nobody's all one thing or all something else. And so the ability to simply have that nuance, because remember, people of color always have to have everybody else's stuff together. We got to know everything about everybody else. We got to know that Foreigner sang this song. we got to know all this other stuff. You know what I mean? We got to know Chaucer and Dickens and all the rest of stuff, and nobody got to know our stuff. You know, so we're code switching and acting to multiple languages all at one time because we're going between our language you want to hear to all the rest, and most of us like, I care less about this junk. You know what I mean? So just treat people like with respect. Talk to people like you talk to anybody else who you care about. You know what I mean? Look people in the eye, shake their hand and say, excuse me. You know? These cordial, natural things that you do, and they will do way more for you with a parent than figuring out if they want to be called African American, Afro Latino, Afro, whatever else, all that kind of stuff. Just where are you? Can I talk to you as a human? Okay? So we're not something crazy and different and all that kind of stuff, you guys. Just treat us the same way you treat anybody else, and I guarantee you'll get the same treatment right back. Okay? All right. So, any questions? Yes, in the back. And thank you, Stacy, for that, for being open enough to ask in that space. Yes.
What advice would you give to a white or Latino teacher when you have black parents that come to you and tell you, like, oh, you can't teach black kids like African American history because they're not black?
Okay, African American history is a discipline, it's not a feeling. Let me say that again. It's a discipline, not a feeling. A discipline means it has rules to it. It has an epistemology. These are the books. These are the scholars. These are the authors. You get me? It's that. So you can't just tell me that because just because you are black doesn't mean you understand black history. Or do you understand like who Carter G. Woodson was? Why is African American history created? What is the epistemological books in the whole genre? Who are the other big writers? John Hope Franklin, people like that. You know, do you know any of those things? I'm not saying you say that to somebody, but it's a discipline. Remember, you guys, my PhD is not in black history, it's in Latin American history. I walk in the classroom, you can imagine, you know, people have been looking around like, hey man, I finally got to college and I'm gonna get this chance to take this class called Intro to Latin American Studies, and I'm thinking, you know, I've been a Mexican in LA or a Salvadoran in Long Beach, or, you know, a person from Guatemala in Hawthorne, and I wanna finally see and get a person who looks like me and don't say, and then I walk in. Yeah, I walk in. I'm saying this because everything I'm telling you guys, because I live that world, because I don't, you know what I mean? So I walk in. And I could go in here and say, I can be a better Guatemalan than you, or a better Salvadoreño than you, or I can't do all that stuff. But what I can do is show you that I cared about the discipline enough to know my stuff. And so I just go in, you guys know how I teach, and I go in, boom, let's go. Okay, this name is Hernan Cortez. Okay, the Aztecs, they believe in such and such. Here's the Popol Vuh. Here's where they believe their creation myth came from. We start getting it in, you know? And then the students are coming out, Dr. Walker, man, you know, I thought in the beginning, but I don't know, I guess I'm going to learn a lot from you, you know what I mean? And then the parents are like, man, I got so many, man, come on, you know what I mean? So I live it. I'm not just telling it to you guys. Remember, I walk into a classroom black every day. And my students in California, and the majority of my students are never black. You know? And I got to teach other people who don't look like me. And what if a white person says to me, you can't teach American history because you're not, you know what I mean? So I'm just telling you guys, you have a degree for a reason. It's a discipline, a discipline, a discipline. It's not a feeling. Okay? It has, you like to say, scholars, just like if you're, usually, you got my thing, we're going to have to, maybe tomorrow we're going to have to do the thing I do about the epistemology and everything else. Yeah. All right. So let me just give you guys some real quick stuff. Let me start with this. Number one, when you're looking at African American history, you got to start with, we have, I'd say, 3 different ways to look at African American history as a scholar. 3 different approaches. One we call the African American approach, one we call the Nile Valley approach, and one we call the African diaspora approach, okay? African American approach centers itself on the experiences of black people in the United States of America from 1619 to the present. It doesn't care about Brazil, Colombia, anything else. It is 1619. It's going to talk about George Washington and all, you know what I mean? All that stuff. That's the African American approach. And it's established by this guy named Carter G. Woodson. If you don't remember anything else from me today, Carter G. Woodson, okay? He's the foundational figure. No, it's the one about, it's not on YouTube. But just bring up a picture. Carter G. Woodson, the book, Miseducation. But Carter G. Woodson, so I also tell people this, Black History Month, so anybody know why is it in February? One is Lincoln's birthday. So, I say this because a lot of people say this, and I'm saying this to a whole bunch of, I'm going to single out a group of people called African Americans right now and just say this. Stop saying this. It's in February because they gave us the shortest month of the year. Because we say it all the time. Nobody said it, but you know we say it all the time. Because they gave us the shortest month of the year, because they gave us the shortest month. No, it's not it. Carter G. Woodson said, I want to go ahead and celebrate and recognize the contribution of people of African descent to America. So he said, I want to do it first as this thing he called Negro, the word meant black, Negro History Week, which was created to coincide with the birth date of Abraham Lincoln and then the chosen birth date of Frederick Douglass, because Frederick Douglass never knew what day he was born on. So he picked Valentine's Day as his birthday. Okay? So it's created to be able to, for a week, and then it goes from 27, all the way to 1973 is just Negro History Week. And then in 1973, well, it's actually 75, Gerald Ford, the Republican president, changed it from African American History Week to month and said, well, we as a country would do well to celebrate the contributions of this great people to our country. So that's Carter G. Woodson starts that. So the African American approach is that approach. And also the seminal book, you got it up for Miseducation of the Negro. So the book is called A Miseducation of the Negro. And there's a quote in it. The quote has to do with, if you teach a man, it talks about inferiority, and it says, if you teach a man that he is less than, if you teach him that he is nobody, that even if you create a place for him in the front, he will make a place for himself in the back because his DNA makes it necessary. In essence, he's been so taught to be inferior that even if you go ahead and put him in an equal position, a person will go back to the other space. And Carter G. Woodson said that's because people don't know themselves well enough. So he creates a whole curriculum, not just 1 or 2 curriculums, the organization called the Association for the Study of Afro-American Life and History, still alive today. And at its height in the 1940s, they had over 5,000 chapters around the United States, not at schools, not at universities, churches, meeting halls, you name it, and you get a whole curriculum that this is what happened on this day, this is what's going on. And then he published a whole journal, which still exists today, called the Journal of Negro History, still as an academic journal, and it says at the beginning, for teachers, because they need these materials and stuff like that. So Carter G. Woodson establishes the whole basis of everything, okay? So after Carter G. Woodson, there's a guy who comes along, John Hope Franklin, and these are both in the in the space of the African American approach. John Hope Franklin grew up in a place called Tulsa, Oklahoma. In Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1919, something happened. What was it called? The Tulsa Race Massacre, okay? All right? And John Hope Franklin was about 6 years old when that happened. He witnessed it. But he chose to stay in America, stay in Tulsa, and then dedicate his life to become a historian who uses history to bring about change and reconciliation. His book, which is called From Slavery to Freedom, is the seminal text in the teaching of African American history. It was first published in 1946. It has not gone out of publication since. If you go to take a class at UCR, Harvard, Valley College, the book that they're going to assign to you in the African American history class is From Slavery to Freedom. Okay? It is considered a national treasure. John Hope Franklin died, about 15 years ago. But every about 10 years, people come together, they update the book, but we always still call it by John Hope Franklin because none of us would be in the field without him. Okay? So that's the African American approach. I'll switch to the next one. It's called the Nile Valley approach. These were people who were coming out of the 1960s, out of the Black Power movement and all the civil rights movement, and they were questioning everything that had whiteness on it. Everything. And they were like, why do we start in chains, 1619? You know what I mean? My history is before that. And somebody could say, well, let's say 1619 in West Africa. They said, no, I want to go back further. I want to go to the birthplace of civilization. You see, in the West, we prop up Greece and Rome, right? Greece and Rome, Greece and Rome, Greece and Rome. The Grecians did it in Rome. Socrates, Plato, we Greece, Rome, all the stuff. But what was before that? It's Egypt. It's the Nile Valley, y'all. That's where the birthplace, the cradle of civilization was in that part of the world. And those people came about and had, contributions and created philosophies and everything else. So there's two scholars who are associated with that. One, can DJ for me? Come on, Hardy, come on. You know what I'm doing? Stop all that, man. Come on. You know what we're doing. We're old school right here. We do it like we used to do it. All right? So the guy, his name is Molefi Asante. Molefi Asante, Asante. He wasn't born Molefi Asante, he was born Robert Johnson. But in the middle of the 1950s and 60s, you guys know there was a group called the Nation of Islam, which Malcolm X was a member of. And part of the thing with the Nation of Islam was that you had a name, Daniel Walker, Daniel Johnson, whatever else, but that last name was not your name. What was it? Somebody back to me. It's your slave name, all right? And so when you enter the Nation of Islam, you get rid of your slave name, you take the X as the unknown until you get your real name, that you come to your understanding of yourself. So the notion was for many of these people to get rid of their European names and everything else. So Robert Johnson becomes Molefi Asante. Molefi Asante went to school in Arkansas as the only black student at a private religious college because he was just so intelligent. He was always the one, like he won the scholarship where he went to a boarding school when he was like 11, and then he's 16. He was a member of the thing called the Church of Christ, and he then got his, I think he got his BA back east, but then he came to LA, to UCLA, to get his master's and his PhD. He was actually a minister at the Church of Christ Church on Gage and 64. Anyway, he ends up becoming this amazing guy who starts off in linguistics, so he's about language and everything else. He has his PhD by 27, and I think, Hardy, put it on there. Come on, man. Hardy, you know you should have been on this. Come on, man. All right, come on, Hardy. Come on. Boom, let's go. Don't work on nothing else right now, Hardy. Stay on this, all right? So, Molefi Asante, just to let you know, Molefi Asante has published over 100 books. He's one of the biggest minds that there are. And one of his most important books is a book called Afrocentricity. Okay? Afrocentricity. Anybody know what ethnocentrism is? What is it? Where you, in essence, your world, is the lens by which you look at everything else. If I'm tall, I look at it as tall people's world. If I'm from Venezuela, I'm Venezuelan. And he said, you know what the problem with black people is? This is what Molefi Asante would say. We've been too Eurocentric. That we are black people, but our world is about the perspectives of Europeans. So he says that we need to switch our lens to become Afrocentric. Think about our needs first. Think about what we need to do. You know, what's going on with us? And it's a big deal. So he ends up being the person who establishes the first PhD program in African American Studies. Where's that at? Anybody know? Temple University. That's the first PhD program. Long Beach has a master's program. The person you're thinking about is the person I'm going to bring up next, okay? So, Molefi Asante is like the top notch. We're talking about an epistemology. Where does your knowledge come from? Who are the scholars? Who do you cite? That's a person. So the next person, his name is Maulana Karenga. Come on, Hardy. Hardy be going on everything. Hardy, keep it on there. Keep it on there, Hardy. Keep it on there. All right? Keep it on there. Don't take it off. Keep the screen up there, okay? Just keep it up. And then just, we can watch you go around, okay? All right. All right. I know it's hard. Hardy got ADHD. Ah, man.
He's got a whole presentation in there.
All right, come on, you guys. But so that's Malefi Asante. Another guy comes along. His name is Maulana Karenga. Maulana Karenga. Karnga. It means master teacher. Okay. He was born Ronald Jackson, but had to give up his name. Okay. He's a little different. He's what we call a cultural nationalist. He believes that everything and every solution to black problems in the world come from black people in Africa. That you shouldn't adopt socialism. Why? Because that's Engels and Marx, and that's a European thing from Germany. And why would you want to be a socialist versus being, we call it Ujamaa, collective work and responsibility. So he'll bring up this right here. So Maulana Karenga is the creator of Kwanzaa. So you guys may or may not know, many, not all, but many African Americans celebrate this thing called Kwanzaa. It's a non-religious holiday the day after Christmas, from the 26th of December to January 1st. It's called Kwanzaa. And every day, Kwanzaa has a different day. You light candles on the menorah, as we call it, kind of like a Jewish Hanukkah stuff. And you light these, and they're red, black, and green, which are the colors of our flag. You know what I mean? And you light these, and every day is dedicated to a different principle. So one principle is Ujamaa, which is collective work and responsibility. One is Kuji Chagalia. Remember that word on the side thing on the tombstone? That means self-determination. There's another word that many of you guys hear every day in your classrooms. Imani. You got kids named Imani? It means faith. Okay? But there's all kinds of different principles of Kwanzaa. So Karenga created that. And Karenga's an interesting guy. So the first intro to African American studies I ever took was with Karenga at UC Riverside. Okay? And it was a trip. Now can you bring up his face?
Yeah.
Maulana Karenga.
I'm working with person
Keep it. I need this already. You can't take it away.
I am working on somebody who's meeting me in.
I know, but you can't not, Yeah. Here we go. So this is Maulana Karenga. All right? He's a short dude. He always wears he never wears European clothes, ever. Him or Malefi Asante never wear European. Yeah. They never wear European clothes. They just, they can't do that. It's against the rules for that. Yeah, that's him right there. So he's this little dude. He has this pot belly. He always wears these dashikis, and his voice is like this. Daniel, come over here, Daniel. What you doing, Daniel? Daniel. That's how he talks. And anybody ever take him at UCR or took him at Long Beach? Because he's the chair of the ethnic studies at Long Beach to this day. This dude, he used to walk in. So he's the leader of a social organization called US. Okay. In the 1960s, US was in rivalry with the Black Panthers. Okay, so you just know, Black Panthers are based in Oakland, California. US is based in LA. Okay, so he creates an organization called US. He's very much about Afrocentricity, the notion of being African and everything else. Like I say, he creates Kwanzaa. Karenga does a lot of stuff, but he has like a following, and it's crazy. So when we used to go to class, he'd have these 4 women come in class with. They all had the biggest afros you ever wanted to see. Anybody who's ever seen him speak, they come in. And you guys know in the days of chalkboards, there would be chalkboards at UCR, like back, side chalkboards. And these women would come in and fill out all this stuff on the chalkboards before we even started class. He's very organized. For him, everything is here, then it's A, B, C, then it's 1, A, B, C, then it's 2, A, B, C. Everything is like, they put all this around the board. Then he'd come in like he's like the king or something like that. It was crazy. He'd be like, is this some cult or something like that? Because he's walking in with this African stuff. He's got these 2, and all the women are taller than him. He has these big afros. They're coming in, and then they sit in the front row of class and take notes like they didn't just write the stuff on the board. Or like they didn't just hear this lecture at Long Beach or the other school he taught at. Or they haven't heard this lecture forever. And they'd be sitting up there taking all these things, and you're just a 19-year-old going, what the hell is this? This is some cultish. I don't know what this is, right? So anyway, this dude, very, very important in the whole picture and the movement. He writes the seminal text for black studies, which is called Intro to Black Studies, okay? And he's a guy. But his perspective, Nile Valley civilization perspective, is the least used perspective of people in the academy today. So they're going to use African American much more, and then the third one I'm going to tell you about diaspora a lot more, but almost nobody is in the Nile Valley civilization. And the reason is because, so I think I may have told you guys, so I make films and stuff like that, and one of the films I'm part of a producer is this film called 41st and Central, the untold story of the LA Black Panther Party. So I told you there's a group called Us that Karinga leads, and there's a group called the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense that was created in 1966 by Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale in Oakland, California. They were much more socialist, and they believe, they would always say that they are the vanguard of the revolution. In essence, like, the civil rights movement is not moving fast enough. This other stuff is not moving fast enough. We're the vanguard of the revolution. We push the thing. But they're based in Oakland. Karinga starts his group in LA. It was actually on 55th and Western. And he starts his group, and he's very academic-y. He's very much about like getting degrees. He has 2 PhDs, all the rest of the stuff. So after the Watts riots in 1965, UCLA started a new program where there had been so many black people who had been coming to LA. You guys know there were hardly any black people in LA before World War II. There weren't more than 2% black people in all of California until World War II. It just was the reality of what you guys know, just like HBCUs are in places that used to have slavery. You know? It's just a reality. So anyway, this guy decides that UCLA says after the riots, there's all these people who have untapped potential, maybe. You know what I mean? That maybe the riots were because there was a lot of, tension, and we were being too, So they say, we're going to start a new program. You got to do certain things, the high school diploma, everything like that. But you take a basic test, and then you get to go to UCLA. And if you can hang at the end of the year, if you got the grades, you get to stay. So a bunch of these people from Us, Karinga included, went to UCLA under that program. But at the same time, the Black Panther Party had decided that they wanted to now have a beachhead, not just in Oakland, but also in Los Angeles. So the Black Panther Party gets a space on 41st and Central. Have anybody ever heard of the COINTELPRO?
Yeah.
COINTELPRO, it means Counterintelligence Program, is an initiative of the Federal Bureau of Investigation under a guy named J. Edgar Hoover to try to snuff out any nascent, meaning emerging, meaning potential movements of people of African descent in America, to cut it off at the knees before it ever comes up. So J. Edgar Hoover figures out a plan. I can get this whole thing taken care of because he sees these young leaders coming up, you know what I mean? And that's to foment a conflict between the Black Panther Party and Us. So much so to where we have, because now we have Freedom of Information Act, I mean, you can see letters that were supposedly written by the Panthers to Us, but it's written by the FBI. It's supposed to be written by, Us to the Panthers, conflicts arising, all this stuff, all fomented by the FBI. Okay, and it's all documented now. You can read all about everything else. So there's having these conflicts that are happening because they're coming in. So his name is Alprentice Carter, okay? But people call him Bunchy Carter, B-U-N-C-H-Y, because they said when he was growing up, his head looked like a bunch of collard greens. He's this amazing leader. He can do poetry. He's got a way of bringing people together. He understands like the past, the present, and he's got a vision for the future. He becomes the guy who's going to be the dude who establishes everything for the LA Black Panther Party. So the date is it's going to be 1967. So January 1967. What's going to happen is there's going to end up being a meeting of these two groups because they were, conflicting in the community, and it wasn't good for the community to see these two striding groups kind of conflicting. So there's a minister, his name is Arthur Atlas Peters. He was the minister of this thing called Victory Baptist Church on 41st and McKinley in LA, and he brokers a meeting between the two groups. But then in the parking lot, somebody gets shot. And then a week later, at UCLA, there was a meeting to try to establish a BSU, or an African Student Union. The people from Us wanted to be called an African Student Union because they believe everything is about Africa. The people who are Black Panther people wanted to be called Black. They're just talking, and then all of a sudden, out of the seats, two dudes come out with guns, boom, 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 and killed John Huggins and Bunchy Carter. As right there at UCLA. What the hell? What the hell?
Every time you start talking about pro something here.
Oh, I see it in the game. Lonnie said every time I talk about COINTELPRO, something happens.